For 48 years, one man ran the Federal Bureau of Investigation. 8 presidents tried to fire him. None of them could. He had files on everyone: senators, presidents, celebrities, civil rights leaders. He used those files to keep himself in power and his enemies in fear. He wiretapped Martin Luther King Jr. and sent him a letter suggesting he kill himself. He investigated Eleanor Roosevelt. He investigated Ernest Hemingway. He investigated John Lennon. And yet, the man who built America's most powerful domestic surveillance apparatus spent his entire career terrified of one thing: that his own secret would get out. J. Edgar Hoover was the most powerful, unelected official in American history. He was also, by most accounts, a deeply conflicted, deeply damaged man who weaponized the state against anyone he feared, and feared almost everyone. This is the full story. From Washington, D.C. to Washington, D.C. He never left. Let's begin. Part 1. The Boy Who Never Left Home. 1895 to 1924. John Edgar Hoover was born on January 1st, 1895, in Washington, D.C., a city he would never permanently leave. His father, Dickerson Hoover, worked for the federal government and suffered from severe depression, eventually institutionalized. The family's precariousness shaped Edgar deeply. He grew up rigid, controlled, obsessed with order and propriety, as if disorder, once admitted, would consume everything. He was an exceptional student, debate team captain, valedictorian, and enrolled at George Washington University Law School, earning his degree in 3 years while working days at the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress gave him something that would define his career: a deep belief in the power of indexing, cataloging, and filing. Information, organized correctly, was power. In 1917, at 22, he joined the Department of Justice. Within 2 years, he was running the General Intelligence Division, tasked with monitoring radical political activity in the aftermath of World War I. The Red Scare of 1919 to 1920 was his first major operation. In the Palmer raids, named for Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer but organized by Hoover, federal agents arrested more than 10,000 suspected communists and anarchists across the country. Most were held without charge. Hundreds were deported. The legal basis for most of the arrests was paper-thin. Hoover was 24 years old. In 1924, at 29, he was appointed director of the Bureau of Investigation, later renamed the FBI. He would not leave that office for the next 48 years. What does it mean when a man who has never known anything but government power is given the tools to make that power permanent? Part 2. Building the Machine. 1924 to 1939. Hoover inherited a corrupt, disorganized bureau and rebuilt it in his own image. He standardized hiring, requiring law degrees or accounting qualifications. He established a fingerprint database that would become the largest in the world. He created a forensic science laboratory. He built a training academy. He also built something else: a personal file system on every person of influence in Washington. The files were not just intelligence, they were leverage. Politicians who might have challenged his authority or his budget received quiet reminders that certain information existed. Nobody challenged him twice. In the 1930s, Hoover made himself, and the FBI, famous. The gangster era gave him his opportunity. John Dillinger, Pretty Boy Floyd, Babyface Nelson, Bonnie and Clyde. Hoover cultivated the press carefully, positioning the FBI as a heroic force against lawlessness. He rarely went near actual danger himself, but he made sure to be photographed at the scene whenever possible. he was also managing a personal life of extraordinary concealment. Hoover never married. His closest relationship, for over 40 years, was with Clyde Tolson, his associate director, who lived near him, traveled with him, ate lunch with him every day, and inherited his estate when he died. The nature of their relationship was never publicly confirmed during Hoover's lifetime. In a man who destroyed others with exactly this kind of secret, the irony was not lost on those who knew. What does it do to a person to spend a lifetime weaponizing the secrets of others while guarding their own at any cost? Part 3. World War and the Cold War years. 1939 to 1956. World War II expanded Hoover's power enormously. The FBI was tasked with domestic counterintelligence, identifying German and Japanese spies operating in the United States. The work was legitimate and consequential, but Hoover used the expanded mandate to do something else as well. He began building files on political figures, journalists, academics, and celebrities whose views he found threatening. Eleanor Roosevelt was monitored for years, her correspondence read, her associations mapped, her civil rights work treated as evidence of communist sympathy. Ernest Hemingway was surveilled so extensively that he became convinced he was being followed, a belief his doctors dismissed as paranoia. He was right. Hemingway took his own life in 1961. His FBI file ran to more than 100 pages. The post-war Red Scare gave Hoover his greatest political opportunity. He fed information to Senator Joseph McCarthy's investigations, carefully, without fingerprints, ensuring the Bureau's involvement could be denied. The careers destroyed by McCarthy were, in many cases, destroyed with Hoover's intelligence. In 1950, Congress passed the Internal Security Act over President Truman's veto. Hoover had quietly helped write it. It gave the government sweeping powers to detain suspected subversives in a national emergency. Hoover had already prepared a list of 12,000 Americans to be detained without trial if such an emergency were declared. The list included journalists, academics, and labor organizers. When a government prepares lists of its own citizens for detention without trial, and nobody finds out for decades, what does that tell you about what governments are capable of keeping secret? And yet, the real darkness of Hoover's career was still ahead. Part 4. COINTELPRO, 1956 to 1971. In 1956, the FBI launched a classified program called COINTELPRO, the Counterintelligence Program. Its official purpose was to disrupt and neutralize domestic political organizations deemed subversive. Its actual operation was one of the most systematic abuses of government power in American history. COINTELPRO targeted the Communist Party first, then expanded to include the Socialist Workers' Party, the Ku Klux Klan, the Black Panther Party, the American Indian Movement, and, most extensively, the Civil Rights Movement. The tactics were not investigation. FBI agents sent forged letters designed to provoke conflict between civil rights organizations. They planted informants who encouraged illegal activity. They sent anonymous letters to the spouses of activists, alleging affairs. They leaked damaging information to employers to get activists fired. Martin Luther King Jr. was COINTELPRO's most prominent target. Hoover personally despised King, calling him in internal memos the most dangerous Negro in America. King's phones were tapped. His hotel rooms were bugged. The suicide letter sent to King in 1964 was written by an FBI agent at Hoover's direction. It was signed, "A Black Man." COINTELPRO was not discovered by Congress or the press through normal oversight. It was exposed in March 1971 when a group of activists broke into an FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania, and stole files. They mailed the documents to newspapers. Hoover ordered an investigation that never found the perpetrators. The stolen files revealed, for the first time, the systematic scope of what the Bureau had been doing. COINTELPRO was kept secret for 15 years. What else is being kept secret right now? By the same institutions, with the same justifications. Part 5. The Untouchable. 1960 to 1972. By the 1960s, Hoover was a Washington institution so entrenched that removing him had become politically impossible. President Kennedy wanted to fire him. Robert Kennedy, who, as Attorney General, was technically Hoover's superior, despised him openly. Hoover responded by leaking damaging information about JFK's private life to journalists. Kennedy backed off. After Kennedy's assassination, Hoover moved quickly to control the investigation. The FBI was given primary jurisdiction. Hoover concluded within 24 hours that Oswald had acted alone, before the investigation had properly begun. Evidence that complicated this conclusion was minimized. The Warren Commission relied heavily on FBI findings. President Johnson kept Hoover in place, waiving the mandatory retirement age for federal employees specifically to allow him to stay. The two men had a functional working relationship, built on mutual usefulness. Johnson reportedly said that he preferred to have Hoover inside the tent. Nixon also kept him. By 1970, Hoover was 75 years old, increasingly isolated, and presiding over a bureau that younger agents found rigid and paranoid. Nixon's advisors recommended his removal. Nixon refused. He was, reportedly, afraid of what Hoover's files contained about him. On May 2, 1972, Hoover's housekeeper found him dead on the floor of his bedroom. He had died in his sleep. He was 77 years old. Within hours, associates began destroying files. 8 presidents, not one of them fired him. What does that tell you about the difference between legal power and real power? Part 6. What he left behind. 1972. Present. When Hoover died, his personal files, the real ones, the ones he used for leverage, were destroyed by his secretary, Helen Gandy, over the following months. She worked through them systematically. What they contained, no one fully knows. What survived, the official Bureau files, ran to millions of pages. Portions remain classified today. The Senate's Church Committee, investigating intelligence abuses in 1975, documented COINTELPRO in full. The committee concluded that the FBI under Hoover had operated as a domestic secret police force, targeting American citizens not for crimes they had committed, but for political views the director found threatening. The FBI headquarters building in Washington, D.C. was named after Hoover in 1975. 3 years after his death, 1 year after COINTELPRO was fully exposed. It still bears his name. The question of Hoover's sexuality was debated for decades after his death. In 1993, Anthony Summers published a biography claiming that Hoover had been blackmailed by the mob over evidence of his relationship with Tolson, and that this was why he spent decades denying the existence of organized crime. The claims were disputed. Tolson, who inherited Hoover's estate and accepted the flag from his coffin, never commented publicly. The man who destroyed others with their secrets took most of his own to the grave. We named a building after him. What does it mean when a democracy honors, in stone and in name, the man who most systematically abused its principles? Closing. J. Edgar Hoover served as FBI director for 48 years. Under Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, John Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, and Richard Nixon. He outlasted all of them in power. He outlasted most of them in influence. He built an institution that genuinely fought crime and genuine foreign espionage. He also used that institution to wiretap a president's phone calls, send a civil rights leader a suicide note, destroy careers with forged letters, and compile detention lists of American citizens who had committed no crime. Both things are true. The building is still named after him. The question Hoover's life raises is not about one man. It is about what happens when any institution, any agency, any bureau, any government is given unchecked power and no meaningful oversight. Hoover was the answer to that question. He ran for 48 years. And when he died, his secretary spent months destroying the evidence. If you found this video worth your time, subscribe and stay. More full stories are coming. Nothing left out.